Steelers and the Browns kind of played an ugly, enjoyable game in a way. It was a battle of turnovers back and forth. We see Deshaun Watson on the first play of the game throw a pick six that I'm not going to put on him, but some people are going to die on the hill of winning as a quarterback stat. And whatever you throw, if it's an interception, it's always on the quarterback. Interceptions, yes, are a quarterback stat, but to me, that fault was not on Deshaun Watson. Some people don't like the route. Some people don't like the way he placed the ball on the route, but at the end of the day, it does start off with a bang, as they do have the pick six in terms of the Steelers running it back. You can tell that the Steelers defense as well misses Cam Hayward. They were gashed up all night with the run from Cleveland. And the Steelers really need more from Kenny Pickett as well. He is very, very inconsistent, missing some simple throws, missing the easy layups that when you take a guy as high as you did, when you take a guy in the first round, yes, this is a defensive-minded culture, but you drafted Kenny Pickett to bring great things to that offense, and he's clearly not meshing well with Matt Canada. We'll get into some of those ugly stats a little later on in this takeaway. But clearly the Steelers win, I believe. God, I don't even have the score here, man. It's like I get all the basic things, but I don't even get the score. I know it was, yes, 26-22, but I always want to be sure. Steelers win this football game. Let me check the chat real here. Both games were trash. I fell asleep. Well, you're a Cowboys fan getting hype off of you guys beating the Jets without Aaron Rodgers and beating not the Buffalo Bills. The New York Giants. Steve, what's up, man? I think you were the one commenting recently on my YouTube. Panthers are idiots to give up 2 first rounds and 2 second rounds and a receiver more to draft Bryce. I'm not going to say they're idiots necessarily. They saw Bryce Young being a Heisman winner. He was really the consensus QB1. Some people might have had Stroud in there, obviously. I wasn't buying the Richardson or the Will Levis hype at the time. I wouldn't say they're idiots, though. You still got to wait a couple years to see if the Bryce Young pick was worth it, of course, but Carolina had to take a swing, right? They had to do the things that they needed to do. But the Steelers definitely needed more out of Kenny Pickett. He was very inconsistent. He was all of the preseason hype, which, again, I like preseason, but I'm not going to super buy in on that. The regular season, clearly not getting things done. Again, they're getting gashed up the middle with Cam Hayward. And this Steelers offense is extremely concerning. We understand the Steelers are a very, very loyal franchise. They love Mike Tomlin, never had a losing season. They've got a lot of cornerstone players. They're able to bring in Patrick Peterson. Defensive-minded culture. That is the biggest thing. And when they bring in Matt Canada, who was never really highly touted in the first place, whether it was in college football or the NFL, listen to this stat from the Steelers. The Steelers offense has now gone 37 straight games under OC Matt Canada without gaining at least 400 yards of offense. There have been 269 times since 2021 where an offense has gained at least 400 yards in a game. 0 of those are by the Steelers. And to take it even further, I want to say every other NFL team has done it at least 3 times in that span. And if they haven't, to know that the Steelers, with the Darnell Washington they just brought in, maybe that's not fair to hold against them. But in recent years, of course, when they, we know the picks they brought in George Pickens, Najee Harris, Pratt Freiermuth, they're really having a lot of faith in Kenny Pickett. Matt Canada is not it. Matt Canada is not the solution in arguably the most loaded division in the AFC North, in the easily most loaded conference in football, with the expectations that the Steelers have, and you can't even muster up this type of offensive play with a George Pickens who is special, with a Darnell Washington who will be very special, with a Najee Harris who was arguably the best running back coming out of his draft class. Very, very concerning for the Steelers offense here. Matt Canada, more stats on him. The team has not scored over 20 points in 27 of his 37 games as offensive coordinator. They've only scored more than 30 points just twice in those 37 games that they've had him as offensive coordinator. And not only that, I know we're only 2 weeks through the season, they're the only offense in the league that does not have a first down in the first quarter. So talk about starting slow. Talk about not having a great game plan. Talk about not really adjusting in the first parts of your football games. And it was a nice way for for Pittsburgh to get comfortable, of course, again, with that pick six. And then you got Cleveland turning right back around, evening it up with that Grand Delpit turnover, the LSU prodigy there. They force a fumble on Deshaun Watson, and then Cleveland turns around again and answers with their own fumble again. This was kind of a turnover-worthy battle, or a turnover battle, really, of back and forth. But we see that Kenny Pickett to George Pickens connection, absolutely beautiful. George was literally picking against the Cleveland Browns. And that was his first 100-yard receiving game. He had a ton of targets in this football game. I want to say it was over 10 if I'm not mistaken. So you love to see Kenny Pickett getting comfortable there. We know George Pickens has been this type of receiver, and he's just continuing to show us really what we've known about him since since he's been coming out of Georgia. You even look, Pittsburgh sacked Deshaun Watson 6 times, managed 9 total quarterback hits, forced 3 turnovers, scored 2 defensive touchdowns. J.J. Watt leads the way with 2 tackles for loss, a sack, a batted pass, 4 quarterback hits, and his first ever touchdown with the scoop and score. And you're still not putting up offense. The Steelers are only going to be able to force that many turnovers on a rusty team where most teams are not going to be rusty within the next 3, 4, 5 weeks here in the league. That's not sustainable because aside from a 79-yard touchdown pass to George Pickens, the only offensive touchdown of the game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett barely completed 50% of his passes for only 151 yards. The unit's run game had 55 yards, 2.6 yards per carry. They are second to worst in the league through 2 weeks in yards per play. This is one of the worst offenses in the NFL that we're looking at right now, covered up by one of the best defenses, obviously, in football. You can argue that it's the best, no doubt. Darby, what's good, man? Felix, you trolling, Felix. Don't even play with me, man. You spelled Saints wrong. Your man said Falcons winning the Super Bowl. I would never say that. Falcons and Saints even sounds remotely the same. But Felix, what's good? Darby, what's good? Chris G. Steve, is that Steve Betker? I believe. I'm zooming in. God, it's so bad when I zoom in. I hope the stream doesn't freeze up. Oh no. We might be frozen. No, are we good? Zoom out. Come on. Have you heard anything about the quarterback I thought was the best quarterback, Stetson Bennett? I hope he gets the help he needs. We're actually talking about Rams what's it called? We're actually talking about Rams Niners later on in the show, so I'll touch a little bit on Stetson Bennett as well. But again, we were talking about it earlier. Something's a little off with Kenny Pickett here. He's got some inconsistent accuracy, inconsistent play. He shows flashes of being good. I mean, when he gets outside of the pocket at times, he can ball. But how often do we say that a player shows flashes? You know, I mean, and sometimes his decision making isn't too good as well. Like you want to see him make better decisions as the Steelers are going to get more into the season. But the run game was stellar, and really, or excuse me, now talking about the Browns here, we got to start looking at Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has been back for 8 games now. Is it 8? Yes, 8 games now, and has not looked good. He really does look like he did not touch a football or even kind of participate in football activities for the year that he was off the field due to his allegations. And you go a desperate move from one of the most desperate, if not the most desperate franchise in NFL history, giving a guy who hasn't played in a year with a ton of allegations behind him, the largest contract ever, the most guaranteed money ever, and it's fully guaranteed, not the largest contract, but it was a fully guaranteed deal. All the picks that they gave up, and I hate to see this happening for Deshaun Watson because I still believe he could be top 10. I still believe he could be a top 6 to 7 quarterback in this league, but I don't know if it's going to be under Kevin Stefanski. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be, I think it can be with the Browns, but the way it's looking over these last 8 games, and I'm not going to freak out, right? But you are 8 games in, basically half a season now removed from what's happening. You feel like you would start to see some eeks of Deshaun Watson from, rookie year all the way up to right before the allegations happen. And we're not seeing that. So you really hate to see that from Deshaun Watson. The Browns are going to need more out of him if they want to hang in this division and in this conference. Prayers up for Nick Chubb, man. Big prayers up for Nick Chubb. Same knee he blew out from UGA. Nick Chubb had 10 carries for 64 yards in this game before going out. And I could really argue if Nick Chubb doesn't get hurt, again, the Steelers are getting gashed up the middle in this game. The Browns really might have won this football game because the run game was stellar. The defense was clearly leading the way. They had their share of turnovers. And talk about Jerome Ford with his best Nick Chubb impression, almost getting that long touchdown run. He really impressed with his ability. The Browns impressed me with their ability to really run without their best offensive player and arguably their best player, possibly next to Myles Garrett. 16 carries for 106 yards is very impressive in lieu of Nick Chubb. And I appreciate the aggressiveness a lot from the two teams here in this one. A lot of some 2-point tries here that we saw to make some scoring differences and really be strategic with the way they were approaching the game. But the Browns had a ton of possessions from deep in their own territory. And ultimately, we saw that at times that wasn't very beneficial for them. And again, to know that Pittsburgh forced turnover after turnover, only scored off of 2 of them, 6 sacks on Deshaun Watson, and the offense only managed 12 total points. Steelers had 8 drives ending in punts or turnover. And I'm going to give credit to that Browns defense. We saw at the end of the game, Kenny Pickett was 11 for 11 on third or 4th and 1 on rushing attempts. Browns literally sniffed that out, all 11 to the ball, absolutely stop him in the backfield. So this is going to be interesting to see how these two teams play out because we've got the Browns not having a lot from Deshaun Watson in the first 2 weeks, but having everything from their defense. And really the Steelers the same, having nothing from their offense, but having everything from their defense as well. Two teams, again, in a loaded division, in a loaded conference, high expectations from the Steelers fan base. And from me looking in as a Saints fan on the Cleveland Browns, I think they've got the pieces to compete. But Kevin Stefanski is going to have to get some things right. I mean, the Browns lose Zadarius Smith in this game. He gets injured, which is very tough to see. You lose Nick Chubb in this game for the season, and they still only lose by 4. Yes, turning the ball over a lot is nothing that you want to see at all.